welcome back. Another Thursday night. I'm excited.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Thank you to have me. Or thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
You got sound bites galore here, Brent. Sound bites galore.
You have to edit that out. I'm not even drunk. This is my first glass.
You've said that before. Edit that out. I've left it in. So we'll see what happens.
So, what do you want to talk about tonight?
Well, Van Halen 2. Halen 2 is where we're at. And I got to tell you, I'm interested to know what it would have been like in 79 when this album comes out as a follow-up to Van Halen 1, which is Van Halen 1 comes out firing. It's like when I listened to that album, I was like, oh my God, like this is so good. Again, I think I said this in the last episode. Actually hearing it for the first time at that time must have just been absolutely mind melting. So when I was like, okay, Van Halen 2, what, like, you got some living up to do here, right?
Yes.
And Brent, this took me a few listens to get into. I have to be honest.
Really?
100%.
Okay, 100%. Why? I want to hear why. Like, tell me why.
I think I had expectations of Van Halen 1, which I think I should have. I think it was like, I definitely could have expectations of Van Halen 1.
Okay.
But just the way it started out with You're No Good.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed.
Is it because you'd heard that song as a Linda Ronstadt song?
No, I had no idea about it. No, see, here's the thing, and I didn't even know, and that it goes even further back to like a song from '63, and so no, it just felt very flat, a flat opening. I think of Van Halen 1 with "Running with the Devil" as the lead up, as the opener, and always kind of got that really cool sort of ambient intro. This sort of has the same, but it just kind of like, then it's kind of like the drum beat starts hitting in, and I don't think it's a bad song, but I just felt like as an opener, I was like, kind of where's the Van Halen?
So you remember we were talking about track selection sequencing last time around, right? That's a great example of like, You're No Good should not have been the opener for this record. I don't
Agreed.
Because it is a curious choice. It's very weird. I would have probably put that like maybe, fourth.
Someone Get Me a Doctor.
Yep.
Fantastic. That should have led the album. That is a top choice. That is a wicked tune.
Good point. Yeah. That could open the record.
Yeah.
For sure. Actually, that would probably be my pick.
Yeah.
That one or Bottoms Up, it probably wouldn't open with that.
That's a good third. That's a good third song. I think it's fourth. So I think it's a good song to come in third with. Dance the Night Away, I think, is a perfect 2 song. That's just a great pop rock.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah.
Song.
I'd put that in the number 3 slot for sure.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Single.
Okay.
That's the single. Yeah.
Got it.
For me.
Yep.
How about DOA?
I enjoyed that one. No, I do enjoy that one.
Okay.
Cool, catchy.
Why did you hesitate there?
No, because again, like when we start talking about these, I'm like, fuck, how does that song go again? And they go Dead or Alive, and that's the one. It's a sad song. It's about like the kids being like cast out and like got a dirty face kid. Exactly, right. And like the police are they're like, first police, they're gonna catch him. So the riffs on this album are really good. Like throughout. This is a fantastic album of really good riffs.
And that's a simple riff, right? It's like 2 or 3 notes, but it's the cool thing about it, and what sells it is the rawness of it,
right?
And if you know anything about this record, they recorded it at a place called what's it called, like Sunset Sound or something like that. But it's like this raunchy shithole, right? And you see pictures that were taken during the recording of it, and there's beer cans on the floor, there's like this crappy carpet, and that all their equipment is all piled on top of each other, and it's just kind of ramshackle and just it's a rock and roll mess, right? And it
sounds like Sound City. Like Sound City was an absolute mess too.
Yeah, but it personifies it perfectly like exemplifies like how that it looks how the record sounds.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing. Yeah.
And you could tell they had fun too with this record, because like there's even during what was it on Bottoms Up. Yeah, like you
They
could
start laughing.
You hear them laughing at each other, and they give Eddie applause at the end of the solo for somebody get me a doctor. Like it's right. Like they took like the success of Van Halen 1, like went in like right after the tour.
But it was all like most of the songs that you hear are first takes.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't like they didn't double, like Eddie didn't double stuff. He just like, to get that thickness, he turned up. So he was on 10, like literally on 10. You could hear the amps crackle, and everything was kind of like, pushed to the maximum. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it does that. The album, again, as I kept going through it, it just kept like, I just kept feeling more and more attached to it. I just kept feeling more and more like, I think I'm starting to get these songs a little bit more as I keep the record spinning, if you will. So that's what I got.
You made that point about them going into the studio immediately after they had gone on tour, and it was a world tour. So Van Halen 1 was a huge success, obviously. And instead of taking a rest, they went right in because they wanted to kind of keep that party vibe going, to the point where Ed actually was a little bit worried about the band because partying was hitting like this, kind of pace where he was a little concerned that nothing was going to get done in the studio. Yeah. So, it did. And I think that, that vibe was definitely captured on the record, right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, like Bottoms Up, it's guys having fun. It's a band of brothers, right? It's not rehearsed. It's not, that was the template that was set for, what would become the Sunset Strip kind of 80s. I talked about this a little bit last time, but the blonde singer, the party ethos, the 6-string fleet fingered shredder, you know what I mean? Like the hotshot guitar player. Yeah. Van Halen were the vanguard of that, and everybody kind of fell in behind.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Brent, I ended up going back and I started listening to some Sound Barrier. Started listening to them. Who else?
I don't even know who that is. Who's Sound Barrier?
Oh, Sound Barrier they were like the first like all black metal, heavy metal, like if you like metal band.
Okay, I think I know who that is.
And Steeler, and took a listen to Steeler. Yeah, that was his second band, I think.
Alcatraz. That was his first band. Then I believe he went to Alcatraz. Then he went out on his own with Rising Force, I believe.
Got it. Because I'd seen that that Van Halen had, they were playing on bills with these guys, and a lot of these guys were like, talking about Van Halen. It was like,
I was going to say, well, why those two bands? Of all the glut of bands that were like, why those two?
Dante Fox, okay.
Bray White.
Right. So I just started going back and started listening to like songs like it's the LA metal. Like that's what the LA metal
at that time, right? That was after, because this album came out in 79. And Dante Fox, that was actually, they became Great White in 82, 83, I think.
They all came, they all came after for sure. But like Smile as well, they were all playing on those like backyard parties with Van Halen, right? So like it was just kind of cool to like,
it's like super obscure stuff.
Yeah, well, I just because it's, all these bands that start with the letter S is what I'm finding. Anyway, so I was kind of like diving back a little further into that scene, because Van Halen was playing these backyard parties, or they were when they were playing Gazzarri's, or when they were going to play the Roxy, like Troubadour. A lot of these bands were Troubadour, these bands were playing with them.
That is I'm glad that you're doing that, because you can kind of see the little family tree, right? When you do that. And I talked about this in a previous episode. People came to LA. Sometimes they came with their friends. Sometimes they came solo. And it's cool to see the path of like how someone like Slash, tried out for Poison and didn't get the gig, or didn't want the gig. But then, like it's cool to see how these, like, because a lot of these people played together, like Jakey Lee, played in Rough Cut, I believe. And then he played with Dio before he joined Ozzy. So like, I don't know. It's just really interesting. There's a whole kind of history. There's a whole backstory behind the bands that you've come to know, right?
Totally. And it's also interesting to know the kind of the players, even like, before they had Michael Anthony as a bass player, they had another bass player, and he was kind of there, I think, when Mo Austin came to check them out, but then he wouldn't go on and actually be a part of that band, and it's just kind of, there's just so many people like that didn't go on with these bands, and you're kind of
yeah, the Pete Best syndrome. Well, I often wonder about, what those guys are doing now. Are they like, Pete Best for the Beatles, right?
Yeah.
He was there right up to practically, the last kind of final stages. And so those guys are sitting there going, shit.
Yeah.
Or guys like, and I think they kind of, talked him out of the band and let him go, and Ringo came in. But people who left and just said, I don't think this band's going to work out, so I'm just going to get a job, or I'm going back to Pennsylvania. Screw this. This isn't for me. I'm tired of sleeping on the floor. And then the band, plays stadiums the next year, and that guy's watching on TV going, God damn it.
Well, when Eddie is like tying his, at the time before they were even signed, right? He was tying his door shut with a coat hanger or with some kind of a wire so the door wouldn't fly open.
They were super poor, like all those bands. Like they had to. I've read stories about like they would go to McDonald's and get a large fry, right, with all the coins that they had found or stolen from someone, and then they would literally. This is true story. Motley Crue did this. So they took the large fry with 4 guys, and they counted the fries out, and they split them into 4. And then that was their meal. Yeah. They divided the fries into 4 portions. Yeah.
Jeez.
That's
crazy.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
They had no money.
People talk about, music back in the day where they're like, oh, I wish it was like the old days. I wish the music industry was like the old days. And it's like, I don't know that you do. Like it was just as cutthroat, if not more, back in the day. Like, because people were actually going to shows, like there was a band, in LA that was like, that kept pushing to get to go and play, the Starwood, and he kept going and he kept going and he kept pushing to try. And then they're like, okay, here's the Monday night slot at midnight, like, okay, like, let's see.
At like 2 in the afternoon.
Oh, there could have been that too, right? I mean,
you know what I mean? Like the shitty bands just started, you can play at like 6 on a Sunday night or something like that.
Totally. But I guess the saving grace in that situation is they actually needed bands to play. They actually needed bands to fill out times. And, this was something that I found really interesting, because Bottoms Up sounds like, in my opinion, LaGrange. That is, to me, a very like, if you think about ZZ Top's LaGrange, that's the riff in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
And and David Lee Roth was, I think, on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about when he was playing it, obviously, in Van Halen, and he said, and Joe Rogan asked him, like, what was that motherfucker song that you guys would close out with, and that you knew a band couldn't go on after you? And Roth says LaGrange. So they had that sort of like in them, but he was also talking like, these places needed you to play 5 45-minute sets. You needed to go in there and you needed to be playing, and because they needed music. Yeah.
But that changed. So what would happen is, like, you'd have to learn, a band like Van Halen would know 300 covers.
Yeah.
And then, they would just go and play 3 or 4 45 sets. Right. Mm-hmm. And nobody wanted to hear originals at that time. But then when you graduated to, like, the Troubadour or the Whiskey or wherever, and you became the house band, then you got to introduce your new material. But then eventually, as this happened and all these bands kind of flooded the market, what the owners did, the venue owners did, was they kind of turned it around and said, well, we have huge crowds, and we have established ourselves as the kind of, purveyors of bands like Van Halen and Quiet Riot and Rat. Now what we're going to do is you're going to pay us to play here. And so bands had to, it was pay to play. So bands had to pay, these venues to get up on stage and play, because they figured out that these bands were coming in, developing a following, getting signed, and then, off they go to superstardom. So they said, well, this is going to continue. These bands are going to keep coming to us. Let's make some money from it.
That's insane. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
Terrible. Yeah. So it completely, it just completely turned around.
That's wild. Yeah. So I guess just to kind of round out that point of, people wishing it was the music industry of old. I mean, maybe in some circumstances, but I bet Van Halen would have been looking at the way music industry is now. Like, it's so easy. What do you mean? I mean, I don't know how many producers, like a Ted Templeman, are going out to these shows to see people, because there's no need for that. That's not where you're discovering bands anymore.
No.
You're discovering them on TikTok. Are you on TikTok, Brent? Do you TikTok?
I'm way too old for TikTok, my friend. Are you on TikTok?
I've an account. I thought I would get into it.
Fess up. You're on TikTok.
I'm on TikTok.
I have an account. I have an account. It's just funny because you think about, the conversations about 10,000 hours of dues paid, right? So bands going out and slogging it out, and the more you talk about this, the more the older you sound, right? Because that model does not exist anymore. So people, to your point, make this video and put it on TikTok or YouTube or whatever it is, and just kind of sit back and cross their fingers and hope that, somebody in an A&R capacity, maybe that doesn't exist anymore, I don't know, discovers it and says, okay, sign here. And, now you're a millionaire. A good segue back into this record, Van Halen II, is that a lot of these songs have been around for years before they recorded this.
Years. How amazing is that? So
they were prepared. Had you heard that story about the demo that they recorded with Gene Simmons? I think it was 25 songs for Warner Brothers. Most of the songs on Van Halen II were on there, but they were called different things. Like Beautiful Girls is called Bring on the Girls, I think. Something like that.
And DOA, I think they were mentioning, were mumbled lyrics at the time. They didn't have the fully fleshed out lyrics for it. Yeah.
I have a copy of that CD somewhere I should dig that up, because like Hang 'Em High from Diver Down is on there, and it's called something else. Yeah. The lyrics are all different. Like, it's so cool. They had 25 songs though. So they were ready to go. Most of the material on this record was old.
Yeah, and Somebody Get Me a Doctor was also a backyard party tune. Man, I couldn't imagine, like, if I'd heard that song, like, that was one thing I was thinking of too when I started listening to this album again and again and again.
Yeah,
how amazing these songs would be to hear live. To see them play these songs, especially at a backyard party. Like, could you imagine they come out and they start their night off with Somebody Get Me a Doctor?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm ready for this. And then the same thing happened when I started listening to Light Up the Sky. So Light Up the Sky was, and Eddie says it's one of the more progressive tunes. He was kind of surprised that Templeton was into it. And I felt that listening to it. I was like, this is it was a little. And, again, it's not like your average type, pop rock kind of chords. It was, again, sort of like this very progressive tune. But I was like, man, to hear this song live would have been an absolute blast.
Oh, yeah. Because it's a great balance between what I call light and shade, right? There's a heaviness, like the riff is super heavy, but then they kind of break it down. And there's a nice variance in heaviness, and then kind of a nice little breakdown. And then the drums like come up, and it's like, it's across, it's all around. Like it's across the board. It's awesome.
And then, like Beautiful Girls is, what a great song. It's a great way to send the album out with. And, man, like, again, the more I listened to it, the more the album grew on me, and the more that I was just like, I'm excited to go back and listen to this again.
And that's the cool thing about Van Halen, is that they've got those heavy riffs and those aggressive songs like DOA, and they're raw and they're kind of, raunchy. But then they've got a kind of a sweet side, like with Dance the Night Away and Beautiful Girls. and Women in Love sound sweet, but if you listen to the lyrics, they're not. But they have, again, they've got a nice blend, right? And with this record, you really kind of see that. And again, we talked about Aerosmith, their second record was kind of like they found their sound and they're coming up, and you're excited as a listener going, wow, this band has huge potential. I can't wait to hear what's next. Spanish Fly from this record. It was the acoustic version of Eruption, really, yes. Right? Maybe not the acoustic version, but it was an alternative version, in the sense that it was tapping. But it was really cool. It was almost like he said, okay, Eruption, but watch this.
Totally.
And the story behind that goes that he was at Templeman's house and he just saw a guitar in the corner, and he grabbed it and picked it up and started to noodle around on it. And he plays so fast and so clean. And Templeman's like, we should do something with that. He just impromptu made up that little Spanish Fly solo, and they ended up recording it. But it's like the acoustic kind of answer to Eruption. And it's, hearing this, you say, okay, Eruption, that's one thing. Like, that's groundbreaking stuff. And then it's almost like he kind of winks and goes, hey, want to see it on acoustic?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, what can't this guy do?
Exactly. And Ted was even like, you can do that on an acoustic guitar. Like,
unbelievable.
He's like, it's got 6 strings. Yeah. Like, what do you mean?
But do you know how hard that is to do? I mean, like, it's harder on an acoustic because there's no distortion. There's no.
He's tapping harmonics.
Yeah.
What?
It's incredible. The thing that kind of breaks my heart is that when people hear that who don't really know anything about guitar, don't know what it is. They just think it's some kind of weird sound effect. They don't know how hard it is and how skilled he is, and like Cathedral on Diver Down later on, he's not picking the strings. He's using his left hand, and he's using the volume knob to cut the notes off.
Crazy.
Like, who comes up with that stuff? You know what I mean? Like, he was just such a crazy innovator, Edward Buss.
And it was so cool, like, because he does that on Somebody Get Me a Doctor. I keep coming back to this song. And the crazy thing about Somebody Get Me a Doctor is it's under 3 minutes and all of this stuff happens in it. But it's like, just leading up to the solo, it's like he strums with the volume down and then turns the volume on the guitar up. So it's just like this. And then he cuts it off, and then he strums and then turns it up, and then he gets into the guitar solo. Like, and then you can see that even like from guitarists like Tom Morello later on in Rage Against the Machine, who start using, the kill switch. It's like there's some of this, there's got to be some Van Halen in him that he is taking, and
maybe
he's a huge innovator too, in my opinion. Tom Morello, just as a guitar player. But I think, obviously it's looking at what happened in the past and how can you expand on that? And
can you move it forward?
Exactly. Yeah.
The cool thing about Eddie Van Halen in my mind is that he did all the little things that nobody else thought to do, like drag the pick across behind the nut across the strings. Yeah. Be like running with the devil. He does at the very beginning. Like, it's just weird, but it's cool because you listen for it. Yeah. Right. Stupid little things like that, but big things that nobody else could do.
Right.
Like Eruption and Spanish Fly and Cathedral, and all the things in between, like that volume thing that you were talking about, right?
Yeah,
that's what made Edward Van Halen cool, and that's what made him, somebody that nobody. I don't think anybody will ever touch him.
No, and from what I've read and understand, great guy, like, just a humble person. And Templeman talked about that about him, once he had passed. He had talked about how much of like a thoughtful person he was, and just real, and how they would text while he was in treatment and having chemo, and just these things that he would you might think as like, he's Eddie Van Halen. He can be whoever, do whatever he wants to do. But he was, again, from my understanding, just a really real human being.
Very authentic. I've heard a lot of great stories about him meeting people and just being extremely kind and thoughtful and generous.
Yeah.
That guitar that you see on the back of Van Halen II, the Bumblebee, they call it, because it's black and yellow, and the striping pattern that he's got, like he used to put tape and spray paint and just do like ridiculous things again, right? He built his own guitars. So the guy from Pantera, Dimebag Darrell, loved that guitar so much and went on, as a Van Halen kind of acolyte, went on to fame and tragically died, right? But Eddie Van Halen knew that he loved that guitar so much. So he actually put the guitar in his casket before it was buried with him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. That's Eddie Van.
Man. This man loved the music. He felt the music. He loved the music. And man, he was the music. What, like, just so good, And even, just he would tap and he would just use his right hand like to do things like, you would, like, when you see live videos, it's like he comes out of nowhere using his right hand to tap, or left hand. It just
he could do it all. He literally could do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. He and he was always smiling. That was my favorite thing about him. He looked like he was having so much fun all the time.
I'm excited to get into the third.
I can't wait for you to hear that record, man. I cannot wait for you to hear that record. Like, this album kind of established that Van Halen is almost a way of life, right? It was as a party band. You hear about, or you hear Somebody Get Me a Doctor, Bottoms Up, like, and right after each other on the record, like, there's a party ethos there, and the party aspect really got cranked up on this record. But when you hear Women and Children First, there's everything on that record, and it's a band that is at the height of their powers. There's acoustic songs that are just fun little jams. There's like powerful tunes. It's a band that doesn't care if you like it or not, and that's my favorite kind of band. They play their music, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, it doesn't matter. They're not playing for you. They're playing for the spirit of it, and they're having a damn good time doing it. And that comes through on that record.
Love it, man. Well, Women and Children First be next. Be the third installment of our Van Halen Thursday Night Record Club series, and we will reconvene Thursday night and
yes, sir.
Discuss.
All right. I look forward to it.
Likewise, my friend. Cheers.
All right. Cheers to you.
Thanks.
And man, those like you.
Thanks. Likewise, I guess. Okay. Bourbon.
Any ice in that?
There was.
There
was. I don't know if that's a faux pas. That's not a faux pas. You do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.